This is a little bit of a heavier topic, but I did want to get into it. I have a hard time. I don't always like doing, because stories like this are a dime a dozen in Hollywood, meaning that...
Dude, he had a sharp chin. It's like a butt chin, but sharp. Sorry. Continue.
Stuff like this is always a little bit harder to talk about because it cuts close to home for me. But I try not to shy away from these stories when they do come up, because it is something where somebody like me who had his own issues in my lifetime with substance abuse and problems like that, you're only going to reach so many people, no matter how open and honest you are about it. But stories like this, as awful as they are, can reach a lot of people, hopefully. And hopefully somebody learns something or gains something from the tragedy in a way. That sounds awful to say it that way, but hopefully somebody can read something like this and then maybe make changes in their own life. Yeah. So this says a new biography sheds light on how the Swedish DJ was plagued by anxiety and opioid addiction before he took his life in 2018. And the article it says Avicii's final journals reveal a superstar DJ haunted by demons. So like when I read this, it really cut close to home for me.
Yeah, for sure.
So it says Tim Bergling was about to enter his second year of high school when he took his first hit of a friend's joint. He immediately hated it. The teenager, who in a few years' time would become internationally known as EDM DJ Avicii, suddenly felt his throat turn scratchy and dry from the intake of marijuana as his heart started pounding and paranoia crept in. The sensation eventually passed, but when Avicii returned home to Stockholm after a summer trip to the French Riviera with his buddies, an unsettling feeling of derealization washed over him. Panicked and worried about the marijuana he had brought on paranoid and worried that the marijuana had brought on some form of psychosis, he confided in his parents about what he had done and how he no longer felt connected to the world around him. They took him to a child psychologist who squashed Avicii's fears and assured him he was fine. His parents were proud that the teenage son trusted them enough to disclose his experimentation with drugs and had sought out help when he believed something was seriously wrong. That's about the best you could hope for in that situation. Most people aren't going to be that. They're not going to be that trusting of their parents in a lot of ways, that they're going to be honest with them about stuff like that. There was one good thing about this. Avicii's mother, Anki Bergling, told her husband, Klaus Bergling at the time, "We never have to worry about Tim falling for drugs." But just a few years later, at the height of his fame, Avicii had fallen victim to crippling opioid addiction, the breaking point coming after a handful of emergency hospitalizations where medics pumped his stomach clean from the cocktails of painkillers, antidepressants, sedatives, and anti-anxiety meds that he had ingested. Things had turned so dire that his family members, childhood friends, and business team staged an intervention in the summer of 2015, following a series of gigs on the Spanish party island of Ibiza. It is a last-ditch effort. It is a last-ditch attempt to help him get clean. This is almost exactly what happened to me, meaning that I was not straight edge, but I didn't do anything throughout the entirety of high school, and I hated marijuana, hated weed. Never liked it, never liked the way it made it feel, never liked the feeling in your throat from having to do it. But at that time, I was more worried about alcohol because I have in my family there is an existence in the past of past family members, a history of alcoholism, and I was terrified of that. Yeah. But at the time when I fell victim to opiate, when I became addicted to opiates, it wasn't really talked about the way it is now. Now everyone knows about the opioid epidemic and the crisis and fentanyl and how all these things kind of plague, especially Middle America, right? But it's a human condition to fall prey to these chemicals.
Yeah.
And
also, I don't mean to be insensitive. In Middle America, there's nothing to do.
That
could be one of the factors too.
It comes along with like a big proponent of it is job loss. If you lose your job or your career and you're struggling, they said that opioid and alcohol abuse like quadrupled during COVID because people were so depressed and people couldn't leave their house.
Dude, you need people to go out because humans are social creatures and to be the healthiest, you need
Yep.
vitamin D. Vitamin D helps your immune system. Fun fact for today.
And if you're stuck in the house and you can't, and you're not doing anything that gives you a sense of purpose, and you're not getting sunlight, and you're not getting anything, it's very easy to fall prey to stuff that artificially gives you those feelings.
Make you happy again.
Yeah.
Because like everybody already binged everything on all the streaming services.
Yep.
You watch everything on the internet, read every book.
Not to mention, then you feel it's such a facsimile of the real world, right? So you can watch all the movies and TV you want, but like I still feel that sometimes. Like at the height of my addiction, I would watch so much TV and escape to these worlds that weren't reality, that weren't my own, right? And now I almost have like a weird form of not PTSD, but like when I go back to a lot of those shows, I realize how deluded I was into not thinking that it was the real world, but thinking that was going to be enough to satisfy me, or that was going to be enough to live through, right? So I understand what he's going through, and he's doing this well, with a career and with a very in situations that are clearly very hard to say no. Yeah,
because like when you hit big, this is like another fear about being a celebrity. Nobody's gonna say no to you, and opioids or any kind of drugs, you can get it just in the snap of your fingers. Yep. This is like something
people are enablers.
Yeah, like you always have yes men's. They won't say no to you because you're paying them, or like they just want the clout that you're creating.
They're social vampires.
Exactly. So they won't say no to you.
Nope.
This is like one of the downfalls about being famous. Like they don't tell you that.
Yep. Not that we know, but we know because other people. We know other people know.
Well, change the subject. I never got high from weed.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, don't do it. It's bad for you.
I only smoke it when people offer it to me. But the only what?
Fantastic.
What? But the only effects I have from it, it's just being sleepy.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. And it says, and it seemed Avicii agreed to undergo treatment at Ibiza Calm, a tranquil facility where program prices stretched to more than $13,400 a week. Wow. After a month of intensive care, he emerged a new man. By spring of 2016, he declared he would no longer be performing live due to the intensive touring schedule he had endured over the past few years, instead choosing to prioritize his health and focus on what he loved the most, making music. He was armed with a new mindset and a sense of purpose, even turning to various spiritual teachers for guidance. So it says, and yet the unthinkable happened on April 18th when Avicii took his own life at the age of 28.
Damn, he died at age 28?
He was only 28 years old.
That kind of reminds me of the rapper Lil Peep, but he overdosed on different drugs. He overdosed on a drug similar to NyQuil.
Promethazine.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know. It's just so hard because celebrities like them, you think they have like the most happiest lives ever. It's
one of my biggest complaints about when people critique celebrities. A lot of times the thing you always hear them come back to is that I agree 110% when people say like they don't know what it's like to live in our world, in the common man's world, but it doesn't mean that their lives don't have problems. Everybody adapts to their situation, right? So what we consider stressful and what they consider stressful may be different, but it doesn't mean they don't feel the stress.
Yeah,
like
they're still human.
I don't like it when people use the money excuse. They're like, oh, they don't understand it. They've got all the money in the world. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't mean anything when it comes to how you actually physically and mentally handle the stress and the situations that happen in your life. I mean, it's almost a trope that, the more money you have, the more money, more problems.
I love it how you were like almost like winking.
I was like waiting. I was like, do I make that joke? It's not a joke, but it's like just because that they have money does not mean that they aren't struggling or have their own problems. So I do dislike that comparison when people talk about celebrities having it easy because they're rich. I agree that they don't understand necessarily what we're going through, but it doesn't mean their life is easy.
Yeah,
it's just
Gallagher Dot.
Yeah.
Stop singing.
So, so it says Avicii's shocking death made international news. The Swedish DJ had been integral to ushering in electronic dance music into the mainstream, bringing the genre to the masses alongside Swedish House Mafia, Tiesto, David Guetta, Calvin Harris, all very, very popular. But despite his world fame, boundary-pushing talent, and $15 million Los Angeles mansion down the road from DiCaprio, millions of worshipping fans, and a solid support system that included his family, a loving girlfriend, and lifelong friends, Avicii relied on substances to keep his battles with anxiety and depression at bay. And when those substances were removed, he struggled with the idea of who he was and what his life really meant. That was the line that made me want to do this article. That is 110% how I felt. And that's with I had I still had my dad, but I had a job, but I was, for all intents and purposes, at rock bottom. Went to rehab, had to get clean on my own, felt like I lost a lot of my friends. So I understand what he's going through. Like you literally have to redefine your life and who you are when you remove these things from your life, because they start to encompass every aspect of what you do and who you are. So you have to rediscover who you're going to become growing, moving forward without those things as a crutch. And that's very, very difficult and daunting. So it's not hard to believe when a lot of people just give up. So, overdoses are not uncommon because you don't know how to handle it. It's very scary. It says, in journal entries kept by the late DJ while he was in rehab, Avicii detailed his battle against depression and anxiety, explaining how his alcohol abuse and drug addiction served as a coping mechanism to escape what was happening inside his head. That's exactly it. You ask me a lot of times we'll be at work and you'll ask me if I'm okay, because I have this weird tendency to live in my own head. Now, it doesn't mean something's wrong, but when you do kind of live internally, mentally, when you mentally live with an internal mindset, right? I'm always thinking inwards. I'm very rarely projecting outwards. It can be difficult. So a lot of times these things dull that feeling and make it easier to go through that. And it's there's a lot less psychic pain with it. So it says, quote, he was a shy person, his father explained in an interview with the UK Sunday Times. He wasn't one that went into a room with lots of people and started talking or holding speeches. But to be a successful and marketable DJ, there's no room for shyness. Not only were you expected to develop a set list of synthy and remix tracks that would build the crowd up before dropping the bass to send them into a euphoric tizzy, you needed to be a presence on stage that would help sell out hundreds of venues a year. Spot on with I understand that struggle. Even just doing this podcast, which we do, very well, I don't want to be, I hate being on camera. I find talking about this stuff cathartic a lot of times, but whether it's celebrity news or movies more often, I find that stuff cathartic, but it battles against wanting to be on camera, right? So it's I just think that if this can happen to somebody that with everything in the world, it is not hard to believe why this stuff happens to people who are struggling far more, with more basic tenets like financial problems or family drama, things like this. Drugs are a very easy trap to fall into. Do you have any experience? Do you have any experience if you want to talk about it?
I remember in the beginning of 2020, I was going to college, had a full-time job, so I worked at my family's convenience store. I had a lot of stress, and then I got kicked out, and then I got kicked out again. Yeah.
So you've been through a lot, and you understand where a lot of the urges to dull those things come from. It's not easy.
Yeah, but it's whatever. I'm fine.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm just really tired.
You're very tired right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I am fine. But yeah, you can fall through it, and I'm just crying because I feel for you. This is why
you do not need to be crying for me.
I don't know. I'm empathic sometimes, so
empath, right? Yeah. It's I wasn't trying to make you cry. I was just explaining to you kind of what my situation was like.
No, it's okay. I have that problem. My first boyfriend, not my first boyfriend, my last boyfriend, he was this is the reason why I love you, because you're empathic. But I don't know, for me, I'm still scared by that, because I try to cope with dating people, and I did fall with the wrong crowd a little bit, and then I moved out here, but family problems.
Yep.
But it's whatever.
But you handle it beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
Much better than I ever did when I was your age. That is for sure.
Well, it's because growing up, like, my grandmother always said, you need to suppress your feelings. Like, you can't show people how you feel.
Very old school mentality.
Yeah, she was like, you have to bottle it up. And, like, she dealt with anger real bad because she'll, like, explode.
Yeah.
And, like, for me, I don't want to do that, but I did, like, have a lot of stress.
I have seen you angry. I've seen you get angry. It does happen, but as it should. Human beings are supposed to get angry from time to time.
Dude, human beings are so flawed.
Yep.
They're so flawed, but I don't know. Like, for me, like, Brett is, like, one of the most important people here to me. So, like, anything that happens to him, that's why I always ask, is he fine?
Well, I would have been a disaster if you'd known me back then. I was a mess. But it says we're just going to read a little bit more here. Don. It says Avicii's dangerous relationship with alcohol was no secret. In 2017 documentary Avicii: True Stories about his grueling life on the road, the musician admitted his reliance on substances and spiraled into something much more serious as he regularly downed drinks to steady his nerves. Coupled with the excessive drinking was his relentless touring schedule. He took on as many as 300 gigs in a single year. Wow. Oh my God. That's insane. When you think about doing this 5 days a week, like a fun podcast with friends, and then you think about doing 300 gigs a year.
They don't sleep.
Massive set list, a lot of pyrotechnics, a lot of work goes into that. That's an insane amount of stress for anyone to go through.
Yeah, because, like, you don't sleep. Also, like, I like talking about how the K-pop industry, they treat their celebrities worse than that. Like, I remember early 2000s, like Korea, like, they do have cars too, but, like, they don't really wear seatbelts there because, like, it's not really advocated like how the US is.
That's really.
Yeah, and, like, their managers are their personal chauffeurs, and their personal chauffeurs, they don't sleep either. So there was, like, this one band, I forgot what they're called, but the whole band, including the manager, they all died in the car crash because they were driving to a different city, and it was, like, raining that night too. Nobody had sleep, and I believe the manager, he was, like, driving, and, like, he fell asleep at the wheel, and
that's insane.
Drove off the road.
Unreal. I mean, that's like we talked about that the other day about overwork being a cause of death. In Korea.
Yeah,
right?
Like, I felt bad for, like, the rest of, like, the band because, like, some of them weren't wearing seatbelts. They were sleeping too because they're exhausted because, like, it's one gig after another. So imagine him, like, trying to stay awake.
It says right here, it says he took on as many as 300 gigs in a single year with the machine whirling around him. Avicii never felt like he had the power to say no. So they would say, like, you want to do the show? He'd be like, yeah. Like, he just felt like he couldn't say no to them. It says, it feels like I'm going to faint every single day now, Avicii wrote around 2011 to his manager, Arash Panori. And not just today in this tour, but from about the first time I mentioned that I felt worn out pretty regularly, but I push it back down and choose not to bring it up because there's nothing I can do about it. Coupled with it says things came to a head in January of 2012 when the then 22-year-old was rushed to the hospital after receiving debilitating pain ripping through his stomach. Doctors determined it was pancreatitis, citing his excessive drinking and acne medication he had recently taken as the triggers. Their advice was to stay sober for at least 6 months and ditch any fatty junk foods otherwise the inflammation in his stomach would not properly heal. He was 22.
Yeah,
and this was happening.
That's
like,
the same age as me.
The stress that he must have been going through. It says, quote, now this is more from his entries. It said, I had a hard time accepting never drinking again, though strongly suggested from all doctors to wait at least a year before even having a beer, Avicii wrote in his journal. Of course, I didn't listen to the majority of the doctors. I listened to the couple who said it was okay if I was careful. I was ignorant and naive and touring the world still on a never-ending tour. Because once you've circled it once, guess what? You're right back at it over again. The stress-free time away from work was a godsend, only made easier by the painkillers he was prescribed while recovering in a hospital in New York City. Upon being discharged, he was sent with a prescription of oxycodone to help manage the pain, which set off a dangerous addiction. Yep, that's. I still think about, like, the first time, like a life, like, where your life basically could have gone in two diverging paths, right? Yeah. If I had or hadn't done that first time. Because for me, it was for an injury, for a skating injury. And I think about if I had just decided to just not take it, what would have happened?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really have regrets per se, because what it was made me who I am today, flaws and all.
Yeah.
So it's not like I feel like I would be a better person if it had gone a different way, just a different person. But it does speak to just how much one decision can really affect your life in a lot of ways. So I just thought this article was very interesting. Like, he clearly was suffering. This is a very long article. I recommend anyone. It's from the Daily Beast. I would recommend going and reading it. If you are struggling with any form of addiction, please reach out to family members, friends, seek help in any way that you can, and understand that it is not it is not something that is rare. You are not alone if you're going through something like that. I just really cannot stress enough that it is something that you can get help for, and you can battle. It's not easy, but it's something that anybody can that we can fight if we put the effort in.
Also, if you don't want to talk to anybody who's like a close friends or family, there is outlets online. There's I forgot, I think it's supporthelp.org. They have a private hotline, or if you don't want to call them either, you
really
can
just
text
Google
them.
addiction resources, anything like that,
or like suicide help, or like for me, I did a lot of self-harm, but it's fine.
It's not fine.
I know it. Like, it's because like I was coping with like mental things, but basically you can text them and tell them like, I need help, and they'll help you, and they'll keep it anonymous if you don't want people to know. And there is like support groups too. You can find them on Facebook, Instagram. Brett is really good. Just hit him through the DMs, ladies.
I do recommend that you don't bottle. Are you okay? You okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Like, every time you talk about your pain, I always feel your pain. I don't know why. I
try. That's why I don't talk about it that much. Or I try not to talk about it too much. I try to be more open with it than a lot of people, because it's very common, at least from everything I've seen. A lot of people, they want to pretend, like, once they get through it, right, and they get sober, they want to pretend like that aspect of their life didn't happen. They want to look at it as if it's a mistake that they've rectified. But what it is an aspect of your life that you have to own and choose to live with every day. And push forward, not in spite of it, but because of it. So who I was and the mistakes I made and all the things that I did were wrong, bad for myself, bad for other people's. As awful as that was, I have to acknowledge that they happened and be willing to push forward. And if I hadn't, I don't think I would be I'd consider myself mentally stronger now than I ever was when I was
younger. It's more like a stepping stone. And then, like, for me, I had like parents who were abusing it, so I didn't really have like a figure to like really help me around. So I don't know, like, everything is a stepping stone. Think of that, like, think of life as like having rungs in like a ladder, and you're just going up. So like taking drugs or going through depression kind of helps. I don't know.
No, it doesn't help you.
No, like, helps you like build yourself as a person. That's what I mean. It's
a coping mechanism that you need to learn to avoid. You cannot rely on that crutch. It's a crutch. It's a crutch that will come back to hurt you later on.
Yeah, drugs are bad. Don't do drugs. Bad, kids.
If anything is clear in this segment, that's what we're saying, that you shouldn't be doing that. So one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up earlier is because we were talking about Bam Margera recently. And I keep hearing this term California sober, and I hate it.
What is California sober?
Like, it's the idea that you can drink and smoke weed in moderation and you'll be fine. But for anyone that's gone through, I didn't go through what a standard 12-step program. I did what's called a health realization model. But anybody who gets help for addiction understands that it's an all or nothing process. You cannot. It's an all or nothing process. You can't just commit to half of it and expect to be okay. So it's. I know this is kind of a heavy topic, but it was related to Avicii, who I was actually listening to. It's just weird because it came up at a time when I was like revisiting that and a lot of David Guetta. So I thought it was an interesting thing to talk about. It got a little bit heavier.
We don't mean to be depressing. We do want to be like the lights of your day, like be your sunshines. But this is reality. Like, human beings, like, we're just a body of mixed emotions, and you don't know what you're going to get. Like, how to quote Forrest Gump, Life is like a box of chocolate.
That is true.
You don't know what you're gonna get.
You never know what you're gonna get.
And also, I found out what the movie was that I was talking about earlier that Andy was referencing.
What
It's called In Time.
In Time.
Yeah.
Never seen it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for bearing with me on this topic today.
Yeah.
That was not the easiest one to get through. I think it hit a little bit harder than you thought it would.
Yeah.
So, like for me, I'm always willing to discuss this stuff because I feel like I can help people when I talk about what I've been through. But I do realize that it's not the easiest thing to talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not the easiest topic to want to get into. It's very,
and a lot of people avoid talking about it,
which is where a lot of the problems stem from, not being willing to safely discuss this stuff, right? You need to be able to discuss it safely with friends, family, loved ones, or seek professional help if that's what you need. So, thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.